Honorable Doze, welcome, Ms. Batyi. This is the panel, which is, of course, a portfolio committee on communication. We'll give you 5 minutes to talk about yourself, just introduction to members, who you are and all of that, brief summary of your work experience. But also touch on the usual stuff of disclosure of the conflict of interest. If you are clean on that, just tell us so that you are not shocked when Google do its work. That's it. And then members, after your contribution, they will ask questions. Each member, 5 minutes, that will share with them. Your answers and questions will be within that 5 minutes. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, members. My name, as already been said, is Nomvuyiso Batyi. I have more than 15 years experience in the regulatory space. When I say regulatory, I include competition law, broadcasting and telecommunications. That's my background in a nutshell. Before then, I studied BProc and LLBs, and an LLB at the University of Fort Hare, and I graduated in 2001 for my LLB. Currently, I am pursuing my master's degree. That is what, in a nutshell, that I've been doing in the last couple of years. Must I mention the positions that I've held?
Work experience.
Okay. My first job that I had was at the University of Port Elizabeth, now Nelson Mandela University. I was a coordinator for the Street Law Project. Thereafter, I was a tutor at the University of Fort Hare, assisting students with criminal law, amongst other subjects. Then I moved in 2000 to the Competition Commission, wherein I was hired as an investigator in the cartel division of the Competition Commission. After the stint at the Competition Commission, I moved to ICASA. I was manager competition, wherein I was tasked to introducing competition regulation in the mobile space when I started, because that expertise did not reside at ICASA at that particular point. And then I acted as a senior manager, policy analysis and development, dealt with issues such as ownership and control, regulations. During that time, I had the pleasure of being nominated and sitting on the first term for council. And I've been a councillor at ICASA from 2008 up until April 2017. Currently, I am an ad hoc consultant. I assist various companies in regulatory work, but mostly not in South Africa, in SADC. I have assisted the Swaziland Communications Ministry as a subcontractor, and I've also been a subcontractor to do another work in Tanzania. So that's what I've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you're familiar with the Broadcasting Act and the processes that the committee is dealing with in amending that act, the amendment bill that we're dealing with. Maybe it will be necessary just to say, in your view, what areas you think we must focus on in changing or in amending that act. That's in your view. and what you can do to assist the committee as a South African citizen to better improve that act. That's all.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, before I answer that question, I forgot to answer the disclosure of conflict. I have no interest in the telecommunications, broadcasting, or print media in South Africa, nor does my husband. Also, we do not have any criminal record, both myself and my husband, as provided for in legislation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been appointed as a council of ICASA, even in the previous term. Then I moved to the Broadcasting Amendment Bill, areas focus and changing of the Broadcasting Amendment Bill. The bill came out, I think, in 2014 and 2015. The purpose of why the bill came was because there was a lot of instability at the SABC with the boards as they were at the time. And the main focus of the bill was more on appointment. That, maybe I'll deal with that later. What are the areas that are important that need to be changed from a broadcasting amendment bill point of view? From where I'm sitting, the broadcasting bill still talks only about appointments, whereas you have an SABC that has objectives that are set in that legislation, and those objectives where I'll use the word relevant in the analog environment. So I would have hoped that you would have a broadcasting amendment bill that is fluid and is able to be forward-looking and is able to ensure that SABC is able to participate fully without any form of hindrance in terms of online presence. They are online, but it's not their core mandate. If that could be explicitly said, maybe it doesn't belong in a bill. Other people will say, but why isn't the current or any other board looking at those things? However, everyone looks at SABC as being TV and radio, and their online presence is very limited. What I mean about online presence, as we're sitting here, most people that are on the internet, when they check news, they are hardly going to say sabc.co.za. They are going to look at other alternatives that are available in the online space, whereas SABC is supposed to be, in terms of the current Broadcasting Act, to be the leader of news, to be the person that drives, or the entity that drives news and actuality programs. But it has only been limited on television and on television and radio, and those are periodic, they are not instant. So you need an SABC that will be relevant for the current times. That's what I will say.
Thank you very much, Honorable Tsedi.
Morning, Nomvuyiso, how are you?
I'm fine, sir. How are you?
Fine. Surely it's not everything bad that is happening in the SABC. And here is a South African who has lost hope about the SABC. Can you raise the morale of this South Africa about some of the positive things that are happening?
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Tsedi. I'll say this. SABC, I think I've presented, that was the ad hoc committee, has, in my experience, has very competent and capable people, both at regional and at national level. And I'm not talking about executives and all those people. You have program managers that are dedicated, people that want to make changes at SABC that I have had the privilege to interact with in my job at ICASA, people that try and advise the powers that be and say, this is what needs to be done. If you're looking at SABC as we're sitting here, most people are focusing on television. But if you're looking at regional radio stations, especially those that are regionalized in terms of, I'll make the example about Lonene FM. I'll make an example about, although it's a national radio station, Radio Sondergrenze, and then you have a few other radio stations. These two, they will come to the authority and they will say, these are the changes that we want to make. These are the things that we think our audiences want to listen to. And that is the good of the SABC, but people don't get to see that.
we must manage our time well because we have 5 minutes, the two of us. There's a debate going on about the need for a review of the role of the executive directors of the board. What's your view on that?
The 3 executive directors.
COO and the CFO. Some are saying, why don't we review their powers and role in the board?
Thank you. I'll make this in most boards, because I have sat in the Joburg Tourism Company, I've sat at Metrobus. Most boards have CEO, managing director, as part of the board. They'll have the CFO as part of the board. Most instances, COO comes per invitation. And that's how I'll start off. However, it may not require changes. It's how you function within a board. It's what is the job function that you have designed for these 3 specific individuals. You can have a smaller board that is ineffective with executive directors that are effective, and you can have a bigger board. So it's up to how you structure yourselves within the board, sir.
Surely a decision to dissolve a board, it's a very painful exercise, not only to the affected people, even to us as parliamentarians. What is it that, if appointed, you will do differently to avoid another dissolution? Because as I've indicated, it's not a very nice thing to do, even for us as parliament. Thanks.
Thank you. The things that I would do differently, one of the things that I noticed was that at all sittings that I've attended, I have never seen a complete plan by the SABC being presented to Parliament. That is the annual performance plan. They will talk to it, but I've never seen, like going through the slide. That's the first thing. Secondly, you need to engage your stakeholders. By stakeholders, it means the public out there. SABC as an entity exists because of its viewers and because of its audiences. It does not exist because of any other thing. If you do not satisfy those people and you are busy with your own ego matters, then you are bound to lose the plot, unfortunately.
The last one. You are currently with ICASA. Is it?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. The digital migration, this is the last one. What does it mean to the SABC?
Oh, thank you. Digital migration, what does it mean? It means that we know, as everyone knows by now, that SABC has applied for channels for digital migration, but no one knows what is in those channels. SABC needs to prepare its viewers and audiences as to what is going to be there. We hear talks of, I attended their workshops last week, of the African content, but no one is unpacking as to what does that mean in terms of the channels of the SABC. Whereas migration says SABC needs to give and show audiences the content that they require and content that is relevant, which I believe SABC has, but it's unable to reposition itself to say, this is the content that we're going to show in terms of children's programming, which is, we know it doesn't make money. This is the content that we're going to show in terms of drama, soapies, and the likes. And I think they have not, whereas they have the platform, they have not explained themselves as to what is it that they are going to do as SABC. Instead, they're advertising it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I will go to Honorable Davis, Honorable Ndlozi, Honorable Madisha, and Honorable Van Dam.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Ms. Batyi for making yourself available. My first question concerns the operation of the SABC over the last decade or so. Could you tell us what in your view is the difference between a state broadcaster and a public broadcaster? And could you give us your opinion on the view that some people put forward that the SABC operates more as a state broadcaster than a public broadcaster?
Thank you. State broadcaster means, in academic terms, purely a mouthpiece of government. Anything that government says will be said on that public, I'll use the word public broadcaster. So we can all say it's cloudy outside, and if the government says it's shiny, that's what will be reported on the news. That's just being trivial, but that's the example I would make. A public broadcaster, on the other hand, is an entity that is set up to ensure that the citizens of a particular country, in this case South Africa, are represented, their views are listened to, and broadly, programming represents those citizens. That's what public broadcasting is all about. That's the summary that I would make.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. You've obviously got experience as an ICASA councillor. From your experience at ICASA, what would you say are the key weaknesses of the SABC in terms of living up to its license conditions? And how would you rectify these weaknesses if you were appointed to the SABC board?
Thank you. SABC is, I'll make an example about radio, has challenges in terms of just meeting basic quotas, let's say, on persons with disabilities. Those are the small issues. However, the major issue that we identified at the SABC, which the SABC, unfortunately, regulatory team agreed with ICASA, was around interference in the newsroom, the chatting, and how people will voice their views, and those type of things. And those are not issues that were in the glaring public domain in the main, but they will sort of mention it. They'll say, no, we'll have to go back and ask. When we're like, look, these are the conditions that you have to meet, because you have to engage a party. You have not met this part of the regulation. Can you go back and fix it? And then they agree, they write a letter, and then they come back, they say, we're not sure, but we'll come back to you. So those are the small challenges that we're facing the SABC. And and it became evident even last week when we attended these workshops, this upward referral for editorial content, especially in the newsroom. And then they list this they have this exhaustive list, which can be good. However, the question then is, the news as they will be presented to you, they'll be very different compared to another broadcaster, because somebody at the SABC has to pass so many hurdles in order for the news to be worthy. So it's more news that were problem, and in some instances, a small programming, which I think they have people that are competent, that are able to make those decisions, but unfortunately, they didn't have the authority to make those decisions.
Thank you. My last question. Being an SABC board member requires a great deal of bravery and courage to stand up to the minister in some cases, and in other cases, powerful executive directors. Can you give us an example from your time at ICASA where you had to stand up to the minister or to a powerful executive director, and how did you do that?
Thank you. I'd say the fortunate thing at ICASA, we hardly dealt with the executive directors of the SABC because they have a regulatory team. We only...
Sorry, Chair, just to clarify, I don't mean standing up to SABC executive directors. I mean your own executive directors at ICASA.
Oh, I hear you. Okay. Well, at ICASA, councillors have more powers than executive, so it has always been like that. They are the ones that lead everything, and the legislation says so, and we've always, when I was there, we lived by, because you take an oath when you come into office at ICASA. So a powerful executive, something that will only happen in their own sort of social situations people that would have, but in the boardroom, things that happened inside the boardroom was controlled by the ICASA Council.
And what about the minister? Did you ever have occasion to stand up to the minister?
Okay. Yes, yes, that has happened, but more at a principal level than anything else.
Thank you very much.
So, Chair, I would just like her to elaborate on the example that she gives. What exactly happened and how did you stand up to the minister?
I'll make a simple example that affected the entire council as a collective. There was an introduction of the MOI to all entities. And ICASA, we wrote and we engaged the minister and we said no, that the MOI is changing the legislative framework and we cannot be signatory to it. And at the end, we ended up not signing it.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ndlozi and Madisha.
Thanks. You claim, or rather, as I understand you, do I understand you correctly that in your observation, the SABC doesn't have a lot of online presence? Is that correct?
As far as every stat that you showed, SABC does not have a lot of online presence.
So on Twitter here, the SABC has 885,000 followers. On YouTube, it's got subscriptions of 76,000 viewers. It's got uploaded more than 70,000 videos. That's, I mean, comparing to, for instance, ENCA that has only 132 subscribers on YouTube. On Facebook, it's got 638,000 followers. Isn't that online presence?
Thank you for that question. That is not online presence.
Okay.
Remember, now we're working on during migration, even currently, although it's still light, there is what people call interactive television. That's the first part. So you have to, let's say, I'll make an example, let's say Stingway is playing. Then you need to show how many people have commented, let's say, on a specific episode of Stingway. That's just the basic one, the Facebook that you're talking about. But online presence means the programming of the SABC should be in such a way that it is available online. For instance, if I were to type at this point, SABC board, the first website that it will take me to, most instances, not necessarily, let's say SABC interviews, the first website that it will take me to is the YouTube website and not the SABC website.
But okay.
So essentially,
wait.
Okay, I wanted to finish.
No, not really. You claimed earlier on that when people want news, they don't go to SABC. 885,000 followers on Twitter alone. That's people, and that's online, by the way. It is the largest subscribed YouTube, SABC News. Forget about other platforms. SABC News. People go on YouTube to watch the news. They upload actually very fast. You can watch a bulletin at 7. It might be available an hour later. The same bulletin. They've got some of the largest watched videos that go above millions. What do you mean it doesn't have an online presence? In relation to news, that was your claim. We'll come to Jovicho just now.
News, as things stands, the largest people that have presence online is your EWN. It is your...
On Twitter, EWN has 730 followers. EWN. SABC News is at 885.
Chair, may I finish? Remember, I don't want to say, you are putting two things that are not related. You are counting Twitter followers, you are counting Facebook followers, you are counting YouTube subscriptions, and I am saying to you, in order, and I'll make the example of the countries that we look at most, in order for somebody to have news that is happening now to be relevant, they had to be watched at the time that it's happening. The same thing that when you go to BBC online currently. When you go to ABC online currently, you will find news in an instance that is happening, not pre-recorded news. That's why I made the example about news.
Okay,
Because
the
can I
example,
finish?
I'm not, let me finish my time. Funding model.
Well, there is time.
Okay, let's go to this funding model. How best can we improve the funding of the SABC?
How best? SABC funding model currently is mixed. And how best to improve the funding model of the SABC is that one of the major things that SABC is not doing is not collecting enough license fees as we seated here in Parliament. That's the first thing. Secondly, SABC, I know that a couple of years back, they received a government grant of about 1.4 billion that had specific conditions attached to it. And out of those conditions, few of those were actually met. So in order for you to, as a SABC, to have a credible funding model moving forward, you have to convince the people that are funding you that you're able to run your business properly and effectively in terms of collection of revenue. And if you can't, unfortunately, collect revenue in an appropriate manner as
How best can we collect revenue?
And time up, but you can respond.
Okay, thank you, Chair. How best you can collect revenue? Currently, SABC uses a number of things to collect revenue, and I'll be honest with you, in other countries, they also use retail stores, which we are also using in South Africa, the retail stores. But after that, there is no follow-up. So I do not know what other models that they are using at SABC,
Thank you.
except those two.
Honorable Madisha.
Thank you very much, and good morning. I put to you that you believe in corruption. And unless you prove to me, you give me the antithesis, I'll remain in that kind of belief. Now, I go back to Sunday Times, a report which indicated that the then minister, Faith Mutambi, attempted to unduly influence you by offering you the position of chairwoman of ICASA in return for you giving a TV broadcasting license to a Gupta-owned broadcasting company. Is this correct? I say this because of three points, and I'm not coming back. Number one, it was put that you threatened the minister when that whole thing was not implemented. Number two, I say, why didn't you go to the police to report that whole thing? And number three, I say, for you not having done both, that then is corruption, and therefore, you've got to prove to us that if you were to go into the board and occupy one of the seats, you will be able to serve the people of South Africa properly.
Thank you. That was what was reported in the Sunday Times, I agree, but I did respond to the newspaper article of the Sunday Times. Not at any point did I threaten the minister. However, I had instituted legal proceedings against the minister, which I had abandoned. And there was no need for me to go to the police station because there was no fraud that had happened. And lastly, at the end of it all, no one was licensed during that round. So I will say this, I have never been corrupt and I will never be corrupt. I hold myself very highly. I'm ethical in my stance in everything that I do, and that is what I will leave it at. Thank you.
You see, my chairperson, the fact that no actual action was taken by yourself does indicate that, in my own opinion, there is a problem. The fact that you did not act, that to me is a major problem. I mean, you indicate that you simply left everything. You indicate to me that you did not go to the police. You indicated to me that you did not rise and say to the minister, here you are wrong, and I do qualify to take up the position of being chairperson of ICASA, whether you like it or not, by virtue of the fact that I am qualified, etc., etc. And you did neither of those.
Honorable Member, I've already responded to the question but let me first clarify, I did respond to the minister. I did write a number of letters to her, and I commenced with legal proceedings against the minister, and such legal proceedings I decided to abandon for reasons that are known to me, that had nothing to do with the minister at that point in time. Thank you.
As I end, Chairperson, I say, I put it to her that there are contradictions, because in the first answer, she gave me and I think all of us did hear that. It was a different response, where you said you did nothing, there was no action, and now you say you did take up an action. I leave it there, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
You still have time if you want to further elaborate on the matter. We have 1 minute.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to clarify, Chair, that I did not contradict myself. I did say in the first instance that I did take legal action, which I abandoned later on. That was the first thing that I said. Secondly, Chair, I wish to put it on record that I had a number of correspondence that I've written to the minister in this regard. However, because there were certain changes that I decided to abandon the matter, but if that is a measure of what makes a person corrupt, and that is the definition that is used by this committee, then so be it, I am corrupt. Thank you.
If it's a measure used by Honorable Madisha.
I do apologize, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Fandam.
Thanks, Chair. So what we're looking for here is board members that are qualified, that have experience, which you do have. We're also looking for people that are innovative, they're going to bring fresh ideas about how the SABC is going to be run. And also, quite importantly, I at least, and I know the DA is looking for people who are going to have backbones of steel, who are going to protect the SABC when there's instances of unethical conduct or illegality. Because the reason why we're here is because board members sat by or actively contributed in in the chaos that's at the SABC now. Now I'm going to continue the line of questioning that Honorable Madisha started, but I'm going to be quite insistent on answers. Now, the media report was that you were offered the chairpersonship. There was a letter of appointment, and that was hinging on you awarding a contract to a Gupta-owned company, a license, sorry, to a Gupta-owned company. You say you proceeded with legal action, and then you decided not to pursue the legal action anymore. One, what was the legal action about? And two, why did you drop it? Please be brief, we only have 5 minutes.
Thank you. There was an offer that was made for the chairperson of ICASA, and it was withdrawn on the same day.
Why was it withdrawn?
The letter just said it will be published at a later date.
Who submitted the letter to you, and then who withdrew it?
The letter was sent to my email address by an official at the office of the minister.
So when the letter was withdrawn, do you write back to the minister and you say, why have you withdrawn the letter?
Yes, I did write to the minister.
And the response was?
The first response to the minister was that, please allow me time, I still have to, the reason was I have to gazette, and I'll get back to you. That
What
was
was
the first
the minister's response? That's my question. Why did she say she withdrew the letter?
As I'm saying, she said, I'm going to gazette the appointment and I'll get back to you. She used the reason of
And
gazetting.
then do you follow up and say, where's the letter now?
I did follow up. I mean, I wrote 4 letters to the minister in this one instance.
And she said what?
And then in each, look, I have to think of the sequence of the letters. I think the second letter it was written in such a way.
Okay, so see, the letter I'm looking for is the one where she says, I'm not going to appoint you as chairperson anymore. I'm not interested in the other ones. That's the one I'm interested in. What does she say is the reason why you can't be appointed chair? That's the one I'm looking for.
There's no letter that says that. It just says, I will gazette. You remember there's a requirement in the ICASA.
Okay, so
Act.
when it eventually doesn't happen, what is the reason given? Do you pursue it and you say, listen, you gave me a letter, you said you'd gazette, why hasn't it been gazetted? What's happening? Do you just leave it?
Yes, I pursued it. And the irony at the end towards the end, when I was throwing the letters, the minister was no longer responding to me, but her chief of staff was
no
responding
problem.
to me.
Was there on the table a license for a Gupta-owned company?
Yes, there was.
And you refused to award that license?
Yes, we did.
What was your legal action about?
The legal action was on the matter of the appointment,
And then why did you drop it?
because the quote that I received was 250,000 to pursue the matter.
So you dropped it because of you couldn't afford it. What else did you do to make the public known, make the portfolio committee know, make Parliament know, make anybody know that you were refused a position as chairperson because of undue political pressure? What did you do besides pursue that legal action?
Remember, when you're appointed as a chairperson of ICASA, you're appointed by the minister. So the only cause of action...
My question is, what else did you do?
The cause of action that I have is against the minister. It's not against the
So
committee.
other than the legal action, you just left it and you let it go, despite there being political interference at ICASA, despite there being undue pressure, despite being an illegality, you did nothing besides attempt to pursue legal action.
That's what I did, because that is the correct thing to do.
Okay, do you see the difficult position we're in? Because we want to appoint people onto the SABC board who will let us know, because we're not there as members of parliament on the board. We rely on the board members that we appoint to let us know if there's illegalities, if there's unethical conduct. If you were in a similar position at ICASA and you did nothing, I mean, you pursued legal action. I understand if you can't afford it, but then you do other things. Won't we put you on the board? Something similar will happen and you will do nothing. Why must we trust you?
Time up. Honorable Machoba, do you still... Okay, Honorable Tolashe.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you. If Ms. Batyi can just take from the last question and just...
Just a little bit closer to the mic for that purpose.
If she can just put a more picture on the events that followed, her supposed to be appointed, but her not to be appointed at the end of the day, noting the fact that there was a quote of 250,000 that she could not afford at the time. What else might that created a problem for her to go toe-to-toe with the minister? Just that, Chairperson, so that people of the Republic can get to hear some difficulties that individuals sometimes go through and learn in the process on how important it is to try. So that you are also teaching people, expose what they are sometimes are involved in, and put that sometimes you must go through and the difficulties that our people are going through on day to day. And for those people in particular who might be appointed as board members. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I stated what had happened earlier. Throughout the course of last year, which was 2016, I was in constant engagements with the minister via correspondence. Because you see, as somebody who works at the regulator, you do not want to be in a boxing match with the minister in the public domain. So I would write letters and say, Minister, can I meet with you? Can we discuss this matter? Because it's been hanging, because ICASA has not had a chairperson since July 2015. And in this regard, which is the part that I would like the committee to understand, ICASA Council function is prescribed in legislation, and therefore you cannot just, as an ICASA Council that has been appointed, come and to Parliament and say, Parliament, this is what is happening. You need to engage, and that is how we've always engaged with the minister. And if I were to say what would happen, that you go to meetings and the matter will say, no, don't worry, we'll deal with your matter. I just need time, I'll gazette it. So the story that came that said there was pressure for me to license the Gupta-linked entity, for starters, that story is not true. Maybe they discussed it, but it was never discussed in my presence. I was given a letter that complied with the legislation of ICASA, and it was sent to my email address by the offices of the minister. So the challenge that happened was more in terms of postponing the matter. And don't get me wrong, there would be brashness and all those type of things, but there's never at any point an indication that says, I refuse. This will not happen. Up until then the things happened this year in the beginning of the year, and I did even indicate that, look, I cannot afford to go on to take this matter on review, whereas I have this on legal authority. This is the action that I could take, because the ICASA does not pay for your legal cost. You stand on your own. So those are the things that you go through as a person. However, which I think is being insinuated, is that integrity, and you make sure in any dealing that you have with the minister, because a minister is a shareholder representative, any dealing that you have with the minister, you hold yourself with utmost integrity. You ensure that your conduct is ethical, that you never cross the line. And that is how my experience has taught me, even at ICASA, that no matter what that people may discuss behind your back, you never stop to say, this, I've been appointed in the public interest, I've taken an oath of office, and these are the things that uphold me. I have the Constitution, and therefore you can't be shaken. People can use other tricks behind your backs, but those tricks will never win in you executing your duties.
Thank you, Chair. If Ms. Batyi can then be appointed as a board member of SABC, how can she use that experience, given the challenges that forced the Parliament to dissolve the board that was there? Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Member. One of the things that, I'll be honest with you, that made the previous board to sort of falter is that they signed the MOI. That's the first thing. In the MOI, you can't sign a document that makes you to be in contravention of your own law. Then you will be in conflict, that you will not know which master you're serving, whereas you're serving only the Constitution and the Broadcasting Act. One of the first things that SABC is supposed to have a code of practice. It's there in legislation, the code of practice that dictates to you as to how you conduct yourself, how you have dealings with both internal and external stakeholders. That's the first thing. That's the second thing. The third issue is that, as I said before, one of the major challenges that I had was the issue of I could never understand what contract do board members of the SABC, in terms of performance, are they signing with the minister? Because you need to identify those beforehand and say, Minister, these are our deliverables for the year. These are the things that we're going to do. And therefore, even if somebody, let's say they appoint another person or whatever happens, then there won't be interference, because you have a contract that sets out, which is what ICASA does, that set out what is it that you're supposed to be doing in a particular year.
Thank you very much. Honorable Kungbela.
I'm just tempted to make one or two remarks, Chair. That, you know, as an individual, in a possible fraudulent space, you either passively participate or actively participate. you also have your discretionary space. You only have your discretionary space if your conduct does not offend one's right in private law. In public law, if you're not breaking the public law as stated. If somebody can demonstrate to me there's a breach in those, I would listen to this. Otherwise, the answers that are coming here do not demonstrate that to me. So as a matter of principle, I thought it's important to say that. So, but the questions I want to raise is that on the boards, I didn't even say good afternoon, good morning. My 5 minutes is going. The board's charter, there's a section on the board's role in the board's charter. It speaks about the board giving a strategic direction. Immediately, if you've been in the management space, you know what could be spoken about is tactical direction or operational direction. Why just strategic direction on the board? Is it deliberately omitted or is it not supposed to be there?
Why there's only strategic direction? From a SABC point of view in the broadcasting space, almost everything that we do in broadcasting is governed and we take our cue from the Triple Inquiry report. And I will tell you that because there was a lot of disjuncture on the state vis-a-vis the board, vis-a-vis management, it has always been viewed that the board is supposed to be dealing only with strategic direction of the entity. And any other thing is delegated to management, the day-to-day running, and including the tactical direction, the corporate plans, and they list those. And that is where I think the Broadcasting Act took that principle from, because we're still living by that Triple Inquiry report as people in the broadcasting space.
Again, in the same section of the board's charter, there's articulation under the section called the role of the board. The charter has got those sections. In the section headed, the role of the board, there are corporate governance imperatives there. Can you list for the committee those which you know?
The one that I can recall is about ethical leadership. It's mentioned in that section of the Broadcasting Act. And I know that also viewership, that plurality of views is mentioned. And then it's mentioned specifically as a form of directing the SABC. And at this point, I think I know there's a third one that talks about, and I'm trying to think, and it just escapes me at this point.
On the sound financial situation of the institution as obligated to the board, what do you think are the threats to that situation as we speak on the SABC, currently as we speak?
Thank you. The major threat is lack of discipline, which is financial management. I think that this committee has seen how, from a finance point of view, there was no measures that were put in place in order to ensure that there's discipline. We use words such as discipline when I was at ICASA, wherein you'll have your controls in place. You make sure that you minimize, because I know it's difficult to avoid, you minimize your irregular and fruitless expenditure, those type of things. That is the major thing that is facing the SABC in the immediate. I know that there's supposed to be the interim board report, which I haven't seen, but those are the things that I know on top of my head that were visible.
Okay.
My last point is that what comments do you have in terms of the historic situation with regards to procurement by SABC. And I want to move on the premise that the entire committee wants good procurement. I guess that's why the entire panel is here.
SABC, I'll talk about procurement from a programming point of view. SABC, like any other public entity, is supposed to have what the plan, wherein you plan as to how are you going to procure this year? What are the major drivers of your procurement? And if you don't have that plan, National Treasury doesn't look at you kindly. And as I'm saying, since I think 2013, 14, I haven't seen published an SABC demand plan, whereas every other government entity is required in law to put it on their website that this is what I will be doing in terms of procurement this year. And that assists in terms of major projects of the organization, especially for a medium to long-term planning.
Thank you very much, Chair. I asked you earlier if you'd ever personally stood up to the Minister, and you gave an answer that was quite vague about the MOI. That was your golden opportunity to tell us about the Minister's attempt to bribe you to become the chairperson of ICASA. Why did you not mention that when I asked you about standing up to the Minister? Why did you take no action against the Minister at the time? And given your track record, how could we expect you as an SABC board member to stand up to political interference and corruption in the future?
1 minute is gone. I don't know if there will be an answer. Because don't take a minute putting a question, because there will be no answer. Respond, man.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Honorable Member Davis. The question when you asked me, I wrote it in the context of ICASA, not at an individual level, whereas the question by Mr. Madisha was talking to me at an individual level. As a result, I responded to that question in the context of ICASA, because if you recall how the question what you asked was what you're talking about from my experience at ICASA, and that's how I responded to it. I wasn't hiding anything, whereas that one was specific. Whereas this one, okay.
But the Minister attempted to bribe you in your capacity as an ICASA councillor, surely?
No, through you, Chair.
No, I think I don't want to raise a point of order with regard to this matter.
I know that we agreed that there will be no follow-ups, but I don't think this must be abused. When I give someone a chance, it must not be abused. Please, because you disadvantage all of us, you disadvantage the candidate. Even if they are very, very strong views, please, let's not do that. But let me say that I will give Honorable Ndoze and I'll give Honorable Kungubele and Honorable Kalako. Kalako will be questioned for the first time. Kungubele will be making a follow-up, and Kalako will make a follow-up, and that will be all. Honorable Ndoze.
Ms. Batyi, you must speak without fear or favor. This is an opportunity to redeem yourself. I read those articles, I had a different interpretation. My sense is that you stood your ground and said, no, you will not give the Guptas a license, and therefore you were marginalized. This is an opportunity to speak clearly. What was the situation? Please redeem yourself or implicate yourself. That's what the question is trying to do. We're not burying you. We're giving you an opportunity to clarify yourself properly. Did you resist that? And is that the reason why, in your view, you were marginalized? And would you, if given the opportunity to be in the SABC, do the same and more? If more, what?
Thank you, Honorable Member. I'm just going to, I always, when I talk about this story, I say, just recall what was happening on the day I received the letter. Because I received the letter sitting at a conference at Sandton Convention Center. I never met with the minister. It came from her office. Whatever that was discussed, that was appeared in the newspaper, it was not discussed in my presence. Because I even said so even to the journalist when he phoned me and says, there's a source that said you were. I said, no, you can check your records. I was at a conference. However, when the letter came out, it came on the eve of the cabinet reshuffle of December. And that's the only reason I could think of. I never, at that particular point, thought it was otherwise. Up until then, other things, people started saying, no, but these were the journalist, when he came in contact, these are the allegations that are being said. I said, no, I received the letter. I can even show you and send you how I received the letter, and I have proof that I was sitting elsewhere in Sandton at that day.
Okay. Honorable Kalako? No.
No, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Mrs. Batyi, I think as I understand, just one question, because we all read these things on the papers. Just to clarify me, did you get, after your appointment, because that's what the article says, you are appointed to a position, you have to be chair, you are given a condition that you can be appointed for the duration of the time if you are going to give the license to the Guptas. That's what is on the paper. We have not heard it from you. It's the first time we're interfacing with you. You are going to be only if you do that. Firstly, I want to get from you, was that the fact?
Thank you, Honorable Member. When I received the letter, as I still state, I had no condition attached to the letter. But because it was December, and at that time, I'll be honest, I didn't even know who was bidding for the ICASA license. Only later on, I think when we came back, then people started saying that this is what was happening. Then I said, okay, it hasn't been brought to my attention, but I know that the minister is going to gazette the appointment, and therefore I'll follow up in that regard. And in any case, at ICASA, people don't just get a license except you are registering. There is a process for a license to be granted to a person. Hence, there was confusion at that time that ICASA did, in fact, give ANN7 a license, and we kept saying, no, we didn't. We didn't. There is a process that will still be followed. So it's those situations that a person finds themselves, that people make judgment call based on what happened or what they know that has happened, and whereas you were not even present in that situation. And even the other councillors at ICASA, they didn't know. Even my legal action on the minister was on the appointment, not on the incidental issues that happened after the fact that people are talking about.
I get this one of the appointment. So there was no letter or any word to either to the board, to the councillors as a whole, or to you that appoint give the license to the AN7.
Not at that particular point, no.
Later, in any point?
I'll be honest, when we were closer to making a decision, I think it was Feb last year, and then people were saying, you know that there's an expectation that the license must go, and then this is factual. But because we have already put our facts for other disagreements that we had with the minister, she has never brought it in the presence of the three councillors that were in the office that this is the position. Even when the article was in the Sunday Times and we discussed as council, councillors were like, okay, it's obvious it's your issue with the minister. We don't get anywhere. See to it how to deal with it.
Okay. Well, Moving from that, I'm asking that because in the board, well, contrary from what the other member said, that the DA needs a board. No, we're not talking about DA board. That is strong and one. We're talking about the board of the SABC for South Africa, not for any political party. So, because we want the characters which will resist. If you can convince me that irrespective of any sector, any circle, where any such messages, as whether wrongly or rightly appeared on newspapers, you'll be able to repel them based on the laws of this country and on the statutes governing the SABC. Because that's all what we want. We want people with that credibility, want people who will stand firm on what is right and what is legal.
Thank you, honourable member, for that question. At the first instance, when you go and deal with a public broadcaster, you know that you are not representing yourself, you are not representing your family, you are representing the public of South Africa. And therefore, the first point of call, you are bound by the Constitution of South Africa and then the Broadcasting Act. There can't be any confusion as to what is your role within the board. And I'll tell you what made it so obvious that there was integrity questioned in terms of caliber is that most SABC, I'll use this word, board members, are in love with TV cameras. Whereas in some instances, you have differences in the boardroom and you fight those differences and you are able to defend them even when you go out and defend before the committee and before any other minister. So you have to hold yourself as against the Constitution. That's why I'm saying I've been fortunate that I've been sworn into office and we had a number of people that ensure that governance and ethical leadership and integrity of the institution is always protected before the individual itself.
So you give us an undertaking that you'll be able to stand any pressure, whether it's from the ruling party, opposition, because the opposition parties also, they do pressurize. Well, it's a contentious space, we understand that as this society. DA, ANC, EFF will give pressure to you, will give you trouble, you know. So you will be able to stand that pressure.
Yes, Honorable, I would be able to. I think more than anything, I have, in the last local government elections that I have demonstrated, wherein there was a political party that somebody shouted on my phone and said, this is what I'm doing. I said, come, prove me wrong. This is what I've done. And one person walked out during our slots, and we treated them with nothing but courtesy and respect, but we stood our ground that this is what governs ICASA. The perception that you may have about an entity doesn't make it a reality. So I will be able to withstand pressure from anyone, and I have been able to do that in the last couple of years that I've been in the governance space in South Africa. Thank you.
Are you okay, Mr. Kalako? Thank you very much. The last follow-up will be Mamutolash.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you very much, Ms. Batyi. Listening from yourselves, articulating the process that you unfortunately had to go through, and you are still going through it here, unfortunately, would you speak a little bit about the fact that at some point, ICASA and SABC took each other to court, and you have been a councillor from ICASA? What will be your take in that? Because here is an normality. ICASA take, or whoever took each other to court? What will be your take in that, given the experience that you are having? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As a point of departure, that court case, that matter of ensuring that SABC adheres to the rules and regulations of ICASA, especially the Act, was totally unnecessary, in the sense that because compliance, we come, we talk to you. At ICASA, we say, licensee, these are the problems, fix them. This is the issue, implement it. However, at that time, you had somebody that said, okay, we'll do it, and then later on change their minds and goes and holds a press conference and says, we're not going to do it. Not only does that hamper the credibility of ICASA, it also hampers the credibility of the institution that the person represented. So that matter for us, when I was at ICASA, we had to do it because we're compelled. Whereas it was something that if somebody just said, okay, this is correct, this is the corrective measure that I will follow, a lot of money wouldn't have been wasted, and everyone appearing on TV and doing all sorts of stuff. So from that lesson, it's for me, you need, which I think it was evident even in the ad hoc committee, you need a governance structure that is strong. You need a company secretary that will be able to advise the board. I mean, you can't be receiving a decision today and hold a press conference on the same day. That means you haven't applied your mind. You need a management and executive team that is guided by compliance and not only looking only at competence, but looking at the issue of respecting the rule of law. That's the word I will use. You respect the rule of law. You do all things to ensure that you are compliant at all times.
Ngiyakwishisha. Thank you very much, Ms. Batyi. I've given my 5 minutes to these follow-ups, so I won't ask any question. But members are here for you to ask questions. If you have any questions to members, you can do that.
I just have 2, is that fine?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I wanted to find out, because I know the SABC reports, and the question doesn't have to, the response doesn't have to come now. What is the process that is being followed to within Parliament itself to ensure that SABC follows the appropriations bill in terms of tabling its annual performance plans and budgeting, which sometimes in where I'm sitting, they seem not to be doing? That's the first question. And the second question, is it necessary at this particular point, from the portfolio committee's point of view, to have the broadcasting amendment bill?
The first question will be responded to by Honorable Davis. Repeat it, ma'am.
Sorry, sir. My first question is, what are the steps that are going to be taken by the portfolio committee to ensure that SABC, when it tables its annual performance plan and a budget, it follows the appropriations bill?
Thank you. As is customary, we will review the annual performance plan here in the portfolio committee, and we will call the full board to account for that performance plan.
Question?
Broadcasting amendment bill.
Honorable Sedi, to respond.
I think, as you are aware, we are busy with the process of that amendment bill. We are still open for those who still have inputs to take into consideration, including yourselves. If you still have inputs, you can as well throw them to the committee of course, through the office of the chairperson, for us to take into consideration as we finalize this matter. It's still an open process. We're still open, ready for whatever input we still have. But we are of the view that there is a need for us to amend that particular act. Thanks.
Do you see the need of amending the bill?
As it stands, the manner how it's the amendments that have been proposed, I'm not convinced.
Okay. We'll ask for public comments at a particular stage, so you are free to contribute. Not here, but when that opportunity is given. So that will be done. Today is the end of Women's Day, 31st of August. Women's Month. It's good to have you, Honorable Ndosi, because you can patch up on old people. It's the end of Women's Month, and apologies for all women who are participating here, because they should have been in a conference of women, but we agreed that they must be here. Happy Women's Month, Ms. Batyi. And if you are driving to Kukule, to drive safely. If you are flying to Johannesburg, fly safely. Thank you very much for your contribution. Members will break for 10 minutes just to have tea. Tea and coffee is outside.